As we get the new ones in from outside, from the animal world, they tend to be much more aggressive, and that can be a big, big problem.
Why is it that Chinese restaurants should take a hit? I actually find it racist and offensive that they would.
If this is going to ultimately become a pandemic, it will, and this may just delay the inevitable.
We can mitigate some of the risk by making sure we're using proper hand hygiene, getting vaccinations. Those are important pieces.
From the Zoomerplex in historic Liberty Village, the Zoomer with Libby Znaimer.
Welcome to the Zoomer. The novel coronavirus, COVID-19, is making headlines around the world, although most cases are centered in China. Tens of thousands have been infected, and the death toll has surpassed that in the 2003 SARS outbreak. On the other hand, at around 2%, the death rate is lower than with SARS, which killed about 10% of patients. Here in Canada, the number of cases is low, but vigilance is high. We've gathered a panel of experts to discuss infectious disease control and what you should know about the virus. But before we dive in, let's tee up the topic.
As the coronavirus continues to spread throughout China and to countries across the world, big questions are left unanswered. Who knew? Who was silenced? And could it have been contained earlier? Here's what we know. The first known case of the disease occurred in early December in Wuhan, a city of 11 million in central China. As total cases grew, officials finally reported the outbreak to the World Health Organization on December 31st. But not before one Chinese doctor sounded a warning online. Li Wenliang warned classmates on December 30th about the virus, but days later was summoned for a middle-of-the-night reprimand over his candor and forced to denounce his warning as unfounded. Wenliang was later diagnosed with the virus and died. On January 11th, China reported its first death from the coronavirus. Since then, the virus has been carried by travelers to other countries, including the US and Canada. Washington State confirmed its first case on January 21st, and Canada on January 25th. To date, thousands of people are fighting for their lives with no end in sight. So, why were Chinese leaders so slow to react?
So, what do we know so far about the virus, and how has it spread? Let's begin with Philip.
Well, this is a coronavirus, which is a large group of viruses that primarily comes from animals around us and makes its way into the human population periodically. Now, there are some human-specific strains of this, including a virus that accounts for about 15% of all common colds. Fortunately, that one's adapted to people. But as we get the new ones in from outside, from the animal world, they tend to be much more aggressive. They don't know where they're going, but they want to do something, and they do it. And that can be a big, big problem. SARS and MERS are also coronaviruses. SARS, I think we all remember pretty well.
Yeah.
And as you said, there was about a 10% death rate with that. MERS was nicely confined.
Okay, MERS is the Middle East virus that comes from camels.
Yeah.
And the death rate is much higher.
Very much, like 30%.
Exactly.
And it, on the other side of the coin, because it is in a relatively sparsely inhabited part of the world, didn't go zoom. But when we get a virus, and remember, since SARS, China's population has practically doubled. And what we now have is huge numbers of people infected with this virus.
Okay. Dr. Bogoch, do we know how it's spread exactly?
Certainly we know that people can, we say, shed the virus through coughing or through other secretions, and those can land in the environment. We don't know how long this particular virus can live in the environment, but if someone, for example, contacts a surface or touches a surface where the virus has landed, and then may touch their face, like a mucous membrane, like the eyes, nose, or mouth, they're likely to, they may be infected that way as well. So it's usually through respiratory droplets from someone coughing or from contact, close contact to someone who's had the infection.
Iris, I know one of the questions is, can somebody who is not symptomatic spread it?
Asymptomatic spread is probably going to come out. We think that patients may be shedding virus from -1 day before they get symptoms. At least that's how it had been with other coronaviruses. We don't know that with certainty. There's a lot we still have to understand from this virus. But generally, symptoms are mild with this. 82% of individuals who are infected in Wuhan got over it. But there is a death rate, and most of that death rate lands actually in people over the age of 65, which is concerning.
Okay, that's very concerning. Of course, there were young people as well. So what do you have to look at dealing with an older population when you confront something like this?
We know that most of the people that live in long-term care and retirement residences, but long-term care particularly, have multiple medical conditions, and so they're much more vulnerable, they're more frail, and they're generally not as immunocompetent as the rest of us. So even a flu virus, we know outbreaks of the flu can cripple a nursing home, a long-term care home, so we need to be vigilant. We are encouraging our staff regularly to be safe, but not be overcautious. There's a lot of fear and anxiety, as you've already alluded to, and so our clinical team meets at least twice a week. We are all involved in phone calls with the Ministry of Health, with the Ontario Long-Term Care Association, Ontario Long-Term Care clinicians, to make sure that we are disseminating the right information to our staff. And then I am reaching out to our staff in all our sites at minimum of twice a week to provide them with any updates as to what we need to be doing, how we need to be screening, and the things that we need to be looking out for. And in general, just reminding our staff generally about good hygiene, hand washing, influenza vaccination.
One of the pluses when it came to this is that pretty early on, scientists, I believe out of China, did a genetic sequence on this virus and shared it. Is that right?
Actually, that was one of the feel-goods around the virus, that not only were they able to sequence the genome, they did it in a record time, like within 10 days, I think it was. And in addition, they basically put it on a platter and handed it to the world, saying, "World, here it is, help us." Beautiful. That's actually one of the nice aspects of this coronavirus. Not that there are a lot of them, but that's definitely one of them.
Tony, I want to pick up on something that Dr. Collins was saying, and that is you want to be cautious but not too cautious. Now, we will get to the unintended effects in terms of the fear, but what's happening in Chinatown?
Well, certainly. At first, I think when the news broke out in December, very next day, when we had the first person admitted to Sunnybrook, Chinatown totally silent in terms of turnout compared to the day before. And people were afraid of where this thing is coming from, how do you catch it? And there was a lot of fear, and still is.
Okay, well, we will definitely be getting to that a bit later. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, what you need to know about how to protect yourself. Stay tuned.
You have angry people now, people that are stuck on cruise ships that are being quarantined. This is what incites fear.
I'm really not terrified of it. I mean, hopefully we've learned some lessons from SARS, and you know, I feel sorry for people that are trapped on cruise ships.
You're aware it's out there. Just be cautious, washing your hands, get out and enjoy the sunshine, enjoy the weather. I'm not worried about it.
Some of the Western people are saying that China has not. They have done very, very well. They spent a lot of money to lock down that Wuhan and 11 cities. Now, even the spread to Hong Kong and people like Shanghai is very near, where there's a lot of communication. You cannot stop travel altogether. And yet, I think they've done it well.
I have complete faith in the health system that we currently have in place, and ask all our fellow Canadians to stay positive with this.
Well, we've learned a lot since the days of SARS, but it's obviously there's still cracks in the system, both here at home and overseas. Literally, millions of people have been put under quarantine, including Canadians returning from China. So what have we learned? What are we doing differently now? And my first question is kind of a political one, because when China began to admit and deal with this, they literally put millions of people under quarantine. Is that something that could have been done in a democracy, Tony?
Well, I think, first of all, it's a good idea to lock down. That way it wouldn't spread to the rest of the country or the provinces and globally as well. So in China, I think you have to observe what the government asks you to do. If you don't, you'll be basically taken away and lock you up until you get better.
Exactly. But the question is, they did that there, but could we have done...
I find it dystopian. Like, with all due respect, I find it dystopian. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Bogosh, but there is not a shred of medical evidence that says if you lock down 100 million people, actually there's 11 million people in Wuhan province, that you are going to stem the spread of disease. There is no medical evidence. So what does medicine do? We take cases known to be positive and quarantine them. We don't quarantine entire populations.
Dr. Boga, oh, sure, go ahead.
May I go back in time? At one time, when we were faced with a threat, as we sat down at the head of this sort of thing and talked about it, we were going to rent hotels, motels near an airport and take all travelers from affected areas and put them in it. That is in Canada. It didn't happen, fortunately, because things didn't blow out of proportion. So it came down to putting people in a hospital. But that is quarantine, and quarantine has worked for hundreds of years.
We're not talking about 11 million people.
What we are talking about in China, though, is different. They are trying a form of quarantine for their own population's benefit, not for the rest of the world. And whether it works or not, it's not, let's face it.
Okay, Dr. Bogosh, what do you think?
Well, I mean, in the past, when we've restricted travel in the context of an emerging epidemic, we've found, we meaning the medical and scientific community, have found that it doesn't actually prevent the spread of the infection. It just merely delays the spread. So if this is going to ultimately become a pandemic, it will, and this may just delay the inevitable. Having said that, that's extrapolating from prior data. And the world has never seen a travel restriction this broad and vast ever performed. So I think it's very difficult to sit and look in the crystal ball and predict the future, because extrapolating from past experiences doesn't necessarily help with this current experience. We can talk about the ethics and the principles and even the logistics of doing something of this nature. But one of the key questions is it going to work? And the answer is, I don't know, and I don't think anyone does. It certainly has been slowing things down, but is it going to actually stop this from spreading and changing into a pandemic? I think we just have to wait and see.
But my original question is actually political. Do you think that we actually, if it had hit here like SARS did, could we have locked down entire cities in a democracy, Dr. Collins?
I don't believe we would. I don't
Do you
believe...
think we could?
I think anything's possible, but going back to Dr. Bogosh's comment, I don't know if it's going to accomplish anything, and you're going to have a lot of very angry people. You have angry people now, people that are stuck on cruise ships that are being quarantined. So I think we have to be very cautious. The other vital piece of that, I think, is that this is what incites fear. When they start quarantining millions of people who aren't symptomatic, that's why people on this side of the world are getting very concerned about how it's being spread and whether or not they're susceptible to it. And
it actually raises a broader question, which is what defines our reality? Is our reality to be defined by the media footprint, by the social media footprint, or is our reality to be defined by actual numbers?
Yeah, but on the other hand, all the authorities are really, really worried that this could turn into a pandemic and something much, much bigger.
But so far, the cases are concentrating in China. They're not really outside of that. Most of the cases, the vast majority of cases, are China and largely Wuhan.
Okay, hold that thought. When we come back, collateral damage from COVID-19. That's next.
It went from 20%, 30% down to 50%, and some businesses lower than, even more than 50%.
Is that okay? It's good.
As fake news and rumors about the novel coronavirus COVID-19 flood social media, fears surrounding it have had a profound impact here in the GTA.
Causing several store shelves to sell out of face masks, some at prices so high they'll take your breath away.
I've heard some crazy prices. I think the U of T has a bunch for $160 a box. When the original price, like, say, a month ago, might have been around $30 to $40 typically for a box. I've seen people that are asking for surgical masks, which don't really protect you. They're not approved. It has to have the NIOSH, and it has to say N95 on the mask. Well, the N95 means that it's nuisance rated, 95% efficient, and particulate protected for up to 95% of the product. You can buy a respirator mask, something like this guy, which has a filter that would work that's almost 100% efficient. It's a P100, 99.99% efficient. More efficient, a little bit more expensive, but lasts for a long time. These masks, unfortunately, once you've worn them for a day, they're done.
There's not too much risk at the moment, but if things got worse, I don't want to leave it too late and then they're actually not available.
The spread of the virus has also generated fear and racism towards Asian businesses, including Wuhan Noodle 1950 here in Markham.
People even calling us say, "Oh, do you guys sell the best soup? If I eat in your store, I'm gonna get a coronavirus."
People were calling you asking for bat soup?
It is. They just connect to the Wuhan and to the coronavirus. Like everything, like our noodles, every material buy in the supermarket, and then everything made just local in Markham.
Wuhan Noodle 1950 has seen an outpouring of community support since word got out about the discrimination they faced, and the local Federation of Chinese Canadians in Markham has a plan in place to help combat the negativity caused by the virus.
One of it is the Asian listers that will be kicking off. There was a series of programs that we'll have to encourage the restaurants in the area to offer certain promotion items.
We created a sticker says cleanness and satisfaction. So all the participating restaurants, they can put their stickers on the door to show their efforts.
So remember to feed your belly and not the hysteria surrounding this virus by getting your news and information from a trusted source like Zoomer Media. Here in Markham, enjoying a delicious bowl of noodles, I'm Darren Maharaj for theZoomer. Oh boy, here we go.
Thanks, Darren. And that was just one case of a business taking a hit because of the stigma surrounding COVID-19. Finance Minister Bill Morneau has warned that the broader economy will also be affected, especially in the oil and gas sector and tourism. But let's start locally. The Wuhan Noodle House is far from the only business that's suffering. Tony, I think right at the beginning, business in Chinatown went down 20%, and then the losses went up from there.
It went from 20%, 30% down to 50%, and some businesses lower than, even more than 50%. As of today, this week is a little bit better. Last week was the worst. I think the reason for that is because there are new cases coming in to the picture, because as of now, Canada only got 7 cases, 3 in Ontario and 4 in BC. And that has a lot to do with it. We have to observe the figures.
Okay, there were some things that I've seen. There was a picture taken at a dumpling house, I think, and the server was wearing a mask. Now, that would make me nervous about going in there, even if I wasn't nervous before.
Well, I think the purpose of the mask is to prevent not only virus coming into your body, but also prevent yourself if you have a common cold, that if you sneeze, you want to prevent yourself from sneezing onto the food that's being served. So you have to look at it from both sides. It's not just to protect oneself, but protect others as well.
Well, it's mostly to protect others. It doesn't work well. These masks don't really work well to protect yourself. They prevent you from spreading what you might have. But I'm just talking about from a perception point of view.
Well, I think that we should be aware of what's going on, and having masks around is a good thing. In fact, we are providing sanitizers to all the shops in Chinatown with the dispenser and the liquid itself next week.
Okay.
I personally feel a deep sadness when I listen to this, a deep sadness. And I hate to say the word ashamed for Canada, but actually that's fitting. Ashamed for Canada. Why is it that Chinese restaurants should take a hit? I actually find it racist and offensive that they would, and I would ask the audience to specifically go to Chinese restaurants because of this, because we know better. There are 7 cases in all of Canada. Incidentally, I would argue there's really more like 1.5, because only 1 of them got admitted to hospital, and the rest of them just had minor colds. Does that count?
Yes, it does count, because the minor colds can distribute it to the rest of the world. And I do not take offense. I find it sad that the government does not explain more fully to the public what is actually happening, who is coming in, how many people are coming in, where they are coming from, and what measures are taken. But we hear great silence on that, with the exception of a few actual cases.
Well, I had an opportunity to meet someone who was just outside the country. He came back from Thailand. In the back of my mind, I said, "Oh my God, he's from Thailand. Wait a minute, is he quarantined? He might be a carrier."
It's the footprint of media. Again, 7 cases in all of Canada. 6.5 had mild cases. It's like a cold. The overreaction is above and beyond.
Let's ask Dr. Bogosh.
Oh, I'm glad you did. I have a lot to say on this. So, I think there's a couple of high-level points. I mean, currently, the risk in Canada, I have to use my words carefully, but the risk of acquiring this infection in Canada is close to 0%. It's close to 0%. So let's just act accordingly. Having said that, we have to timestamp our conversations, because we know this is an epidemic and we know things can change. So that's as of today. I think the other important points are that, people should be mindful of how this epidemic is evolving. And there are some very reputable sources of information that will give excellent updates on where the cases are, how they were acquired, and generally what the risk is in different parts of the world. I think the Public Health Agency of Canada has excellent information, the World Health Organization has excellent information, and many of the provincial health bodies have excellent information. And just one last point, and this is my 2 cents. I think personally, I've been watching this closely, so maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I think the communication and coordination between the federal, provincial, municipal public health bodies has been extraordinary, in addition to the communication from all 3 levels of public health, in addition to the hospitals. And we can easily access information about who has been ruled in, cases that have been ruled out, and within hours of a case ruled in, we have public health officials discussing how things have gone. We've had the Chief Public Health Officer of Canada, even before a case was detected, discussing airport screening measures. I mean, I think Canada in general has done a very good job, A, preparing for this, and B, communicating their plan for this.
Absolutely. Like, there are briefings every single day. And I just want to make my husband traveled overseas, and he had a stopover in Taipei, and he said he was the only person in the airport coming from Canada not wearing a mask, and literally somebody pulled a mask out of their purse and gave it to him, and he knew better than not to wear it, even though there was probably no need for him to wear it. So do you think that these measures are overblown?
I think they are, and to follow through on the previous point, it depends on where people get their information. We know that a lack of understanding always causes fear and anxiety and comments that are inappropriate and beliefs that are unfounded.
Yeah, they're racist comments all over the place on social media.
Completely. And so we have to make sure that the public is getting their information from reputable sources. We don't want to Google coronavirus. You're going to see lots of terrible things that are unfounded and are put on by people who have nothing better to do than make people upset. So reputable websites are the place to go.
Okay. When we come back, we'll discuss what needs to be done within the medical community to better deal with infectious diseases. That's next.
Nobody knows exactly how the virus will evolve from here. It can change its coats again, it can play games, and can do whatever you want.
Welcome back. At the outset, doctors warning of the potential outbreak were silenced, and it took time before China decided to share information rather than hiding it. There were delays in getting visitors back to their home countries, and in some places, shortages of items like hand sanitizers and masks. So what do we need to do moving forward to help ensure that we're better prepared for the next outbreak? And Lynn, what should a traveler, like my husband, going to another part of the world take into account?
I think it's important just to be informed of any potential risks that are specific to your travel destination. And then understanding preventative strategies that could be present in order to mitigate these risks. Things like vaccinations, medications, and then general preventative strategies such as even just good hand hygiene will prevent a lot of these things from occurring. So.
Actually, good hand hygiene. I read that for at least one of the weeks, the regular flu was down because people were practicing better hygiene. You're nodding your head, Rhonda.
Oh yeah, because I mean, people get hyper vigilant when there's something new, and then they forget on day to day. We deal with the flu in this country. There are 3,500 deaths and 12,000 hospitalizations in Canada from the flu virus. And so when something new comes out, people are very concerned about that, but forget that we are dealing with other infectious diseases in this country that we can mitigate some of the risk by making sure we're using proper hand hygiene, getting vaccinations. Those are important pieces.
Well, exactly, and throughout the piece, we've been warned by public health officials that our regular flu is far more dangerous than this, COVID-19.
The numbers speak for themselves. If you take a look at any given year in Canada, how many cases of influenza are we seeing versus the coronavirus? Probably around 50,000 cases. It's huge. The number of hospitalizations in any given year, number in the thousands. The number of deaths, usually less than 100. I think we're about that. Where are we, Dr. Bogosh, with the number of deaths from influenza right now in Canada?
I'm not sure because, you know, when we think about deaths from influenza, we have to think about a couple of different avenues. One avenue is someone gets infected with influenza and, you know, they get a severe illness and the virus, sadly, it causes a severe infection and they succumb to that infection. But I think in the number where we hear about, you know, when we hear that influenza can ultimately kill about 3,000 to 3,500 Canadians per year is not only from that approach, but also from the other associated conditions that influenza can trigger. So we know that influenza can certainly put someone at risk for a severe pneumonia after the influenza infection, and people can succumb to a bacterial pneumonia after that. And we also know that influenza can certainly trigger cardiovascular events like heart attacks and strokes. And certainly people can succumb to those illnesses as well. So I don't want to get too off topic, but the influenza vaccine is phenomenal because it will certainly limit the number of infections that one might have. And even if we know the vaccine isn't perfect, it's just the best we've got. If someone does get influenza, even after having the influenza vaccine, they're more likely to have a milder course of infection. So it's certainly a great idea.
I still have a question. So to me, if we are getting far too excited about this and vigilant about this, why do World Health officials, why are they taking it so seriously? And what we've seen so far is that it does seem to be confined to China. To me, that would suggest that maybe they're doing something right.
Well, they're doing something right in part, but the reason everyone is afraid is because nobody knows exactly how the virus will evolve from here. It can change its coats again, it can play games, and can do whatever you want. And
mutate,
we just don't know. Yep. Well, I'm saying mutate in a simpler way, shall we say.
The sheer likelihood, though, of a pandemic happening, and by pandemic I mean it's spreading throughout the world, is actually very low. If you consider, it's like, yes, it's epidemic proportion in China, but any one given virus, the probability is actually very, very low. It's not a high probability.
Let's talk about recovery and not just the health recovery. Tony, how long will it take to recover from this from a business point of view, and even to have things, all that nastiness on social media die down?
I think we're going to have to look at the data and see if there's any new cases in China, what are the death rates, what are the new increases in Canada, perhaps. If there's no new cases in Canada, then I don't think we have to worry too much, and people are going to start coming out to the businesses.
How long? Weeks, months?
It all depending on the data as it come in. I think right now, China, most of the death in China is, globally, is like more than 90% in China. So it's all concentrated in China, not outside the country of China. So therefore, if we don't have any increase in death rate or new cases, then I think people will start coming back to the business again.
Dr. Bogosh.
I mean, getting back to this issue of whether or not this can cause a pandemic, I think no one really knows right now. And certainly China's control efforts have been enormous. And of course, they have definitely slowed down the pace of this epidemic. But there are lots of variables that could certainly play in favor of this developing into a pandemic if we let our foot off the gas pedal and don't take this seriously. So, I mean, I think it's important that we are currently aware that there are only 7 cases in Canada. We are certainly aware that many of these cases, everywhere in the world, there's a growing narrative that many of these cases are mild. But, you know, there are features of this virus that are suggestive that if there aren't control initiatives in place, of course it can spread from country to country and have different chains of transmission. And I think the other thing we have to remain weary of, and the reason why there's such a public health infrastructure that's set up in place to control this, is because if this does spread and if this does affect many, many, many more people, even with a very low percentage of people that get very sick and die, when you add that all up over a significant number of people infected, that's a large burden of mortality and also morbidity, meaning people getting sick. And if this can be prevented, we absolutely should prevent it. And that's why there is such a huge pressure to keep these control initiatives ongoing in China to prevent the spread in China and then ultimately out of China.
Okay. When we come back, we'll take some questions from the audience. That's next.
In case, God forbid, I feel sick, sneezing, coughing, I don't know if it's real cold or anything, what should I do? Who should I inform?
Welcome back. We'll now take questions from our audience, starting with Leslie. Hi, Leslie. Welcome.
Hello, and thank you. Lovely to be here. I've been really concerned as I watched the developments on the cruise ship. We know a little bit about transmission of the virus, but do we really know what's going on in that cruise ship? Is there a possibility that its transmission is airborne? Is a ventilation system really protecting the passengers? And furthermore, is a cruise ship really equipped to care for passengers and crew who are assembling downstairs behind the scenes and obviously, according to the statistics that are coming out, are transmitting the virus to each other?
I think Dr. Bogosh wants to respond.
Sure, yeah, happy to. I think one of the points that is, you know, transmission of this virus. And you know, we know that this is going to be transmitted through contact or through a respiratory route. Airborne really implies something a little bit more easy to transmit, like the measles and chicken pox. This is not going to be through that route. It isn't. Now, your other point, though, is also very interesting about, you know, is this cruise ship really equipped to ensure that those who are not infected stay uninfected throughout the course of the quarantine? And I don't think anybody really knows the answer because every day we keep hearing about more and more people becoming infected. There are a variety of reasons for that to be the case. Number one, they were infected before the quarantine, or they were exposed or infected before the quarantine measures went into place. And we know there's an incubation period of about 5 or 6 days and not longer than 14 days. So that could be certainly a possibility. Another possibility is, of course, that even while in quarantine, uninfected people may have become infected because of how this is being managed, and perhaps people going from door to door may not have adhered to ideal personal protective equipment and infection prevention and control initiatives. The short answer is we're not entirely sure, but it's clearly evolving to look like a pretty nasty situation on the ship. One last point is we also have to be mindful about, in a perfect world, we'd say, okay, get everyone off the boat and we'll find suitable accommodations. But like the logistics of, imagine finding logistics of getting accommodations for 3,700 people that need case management, case detection, perhaps clinical care, access to medications and whatever they needed beforehand. I mean, the logistics of that would be extremely challenging to do on very short notice at the best of times. So I think we have to factor that into the conversation as well.
You're asking about cruise ships, and I'm going to expand it to travel on airplanes, because I hear patients asking me that all the time. So what we believe currently about the virus, and that's important because as Dr. Bogosh and others have mentioned, it's a moving ship, right? That part of it is. But we think it's transmissible about 2 meters. Large droplet spread seems to be the current way that we believe it's transmitted for the most part. So if you're on an airplane, because the air is so highly filtered, it is highly unlikely that that is going to transmit anything. And I just want to say that because I've had so many questions from patients who are planning to travel. Questions like, should I cancel my trip? Answer, resounding no. Should I wash my hands all the time? Should I wipe down said tray table where all germs live? I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea. They never do that. But in terms of like every last little thing, the mask the whole time, no. Should I get my flu shot? Yes. Pull up your sleeve. It's not too late.
Thank you so much, Leslie.
Thank you.
And our next question is from Shuva. Hi, Shuva.
Hi, thank you for having me. Well, I guess you've covered a lot of my questions. We will be traveling to Cuba in March, so I'm a little bit concerned. I know Canada is taking a lot of precautions, to arrest it or control it. But just the basics, should I carry anything, any medication with me in case, God forbid, I feel sick, sneezing, coughing? I don't know if it's real cold or anything. What should I do? Who should I inform? Consulate?
For sure. The number of cases in Cuba is, I think it's 0.
Yes.
So that being the case, the risk of corona is essentially 0. Having said that, the standard travel vaccinations, hepatitis A and B, typhoid fever, do you need antibiotics? Probably not. Duke oral is questionable, and that'll serve you for 3 months, but I think about 20% get diarrhea from that.
Is that Twinrex?
So
really?
No.
I didn't know that.
So I'm hearing feedback. No, that's not correct. However, the CDC does not recommend getting Duke oral standard. So Duke oral is to fight diarrheal illness there. So it's mainly Hep A, B, typhoid fever.
Okay.
And that's either a vaccination or oral
You wanted to weigh in,
medication.
Philip?
On Dugerol, I was at the opening meeting when they first introduced it, and I said I would never give it to my patients because it's too restricted in what it does for its positive. What it is good for is cholera.
And it's good for only 3 months, isn't that right? It doesn't last a long time. Hep A and B, you get that, you're done for life. You have it, you have protection for life.
So I'm okay.
Typhoid fever, one injection.
Enjoy your
3 years.
holiday.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you.
When we come back, final thoughts from our panelists. That's next.
Don't forget, for free tickets to the show, go to www.universe.com and search Zoomer Media and log on to www.thezoomertv.com for full episodes and more.
Welcome back to the Zoomer. It's now time for final thoughts from our panelists, starting to my left.
Thank you. So, the feel-goods around the coronavirus, I can't help myself. And there are a number of them. The fact that China gave the genome, the fact that we see the world pulling together in a way which is almost unprecedented. I'm actually moved by it. Now, if only we could take that same cooperative effort and place it toward the things that matter a lot. Climate change, AI, there's a number of them, nuclear warfare. So it's actually encouraging to see the world pulling together as it has.
I think China and the world is doing an excellent containment job. I don't think we have to be fearful of a breakout until it happens. So please come to Chinatown. It is safe.
I think it is still safe to be able to travel the world. That being said, you do want to avoid all non-essential travel to China at this time. But, you know, just knowing, understanding preventative measures that you can take while traveling. Be safe.
Stay calm and get your flu shot. You know, I've joked about this, but if I were to say today, I have a vaccine for the coronavirus, I bet you people would be clamoring to get it from me. And yet I say, I have a flu vaccine, and they go, I don't need that. But you do need that. We need to protect everybody.
Philip?
The final word is don't worry. Things are going quite well. They're containing things properly. Have fun.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Bogosh, your final thoughts?
I think the key point here is that the risk currently in Canada is close to 0%. Having said that, we know there's an evolving epidemic in China, and it's excellent to stay on top of what the most current situation is. And it's just a good idea to have a few very good, reliable sources to go to for information.
Thank you all for being with us. Remember, the best precautions are common sense. Cover your cough, wash your hands, and stay home if you're sick. And enjoy the rest of the season. Now it's time to zoom out.